everybody. Good afternoon. This is Jennifer and Eleanor Hayward from the Love You Vibe Transformation, and welcome to the Miracle Magnet Zone. We've kind of thought over the past little while that you see a lot of posts from us in the group, and they're wonderful, and we have such beautiful interaction. But we thought it'd be really kind of fun to have some topics to discuss over the next 6 weeks. So we're trying this out to see how much interaction we can get, and maybe the hope would be to be able to answer some questions for you, possibly about a program or just any of the topics we'll be speaking to. So today our topic is, and we'll be sharing on it all this week, is self-care and self-love. With the foundation is the foundation for transformation. What are your thoughts on that, Eleanor?
Wow, Jennifer, I am so grateful to mentors, wise people in my life who've given me little gifts of information along the way. So don't underestimate the value of a gift of information. Like something at the right time can just click and you get that aha moment. And I remember, I think my first experience when I was introduced to the concept of self-love, I had just broken up with a boyfriend and I was just devastated. Rather, he had broken up with me, and I had was not taking it well, and it just felt like, I was just like leaking love out all over the place. Was kind
Mhm.
of the in hindsight,
Like ripped your
and
heart out and it was just
yeah, ripped
bleeding
your heart out. It was
everywhere.
just like
Yeah.
just gutted, and a mentor of mine, Haiti Novak in Milton, and she says, "Well, you can keep that love for yourself, right?"
What?
And I was just like, I can? She's like, yeah. So I consciously redirected love within. And that was really the beginning of my self-care journey. And that was around, yeah, I would say I was probably in my late 20s around that time. And I'm early 40s now. And so that really shifted for me. And then I remember another time later, maybe 10 years, this was in the pandemic, I seem to recall, and I was
Mm.
kind of in transition with a boyfriend, and I came across the mindset that that I just reflected on my own, that Shakespeare quote, "It's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all." And I was reflecting on that, and I realized that I had a belief that if I love more, then I will hurt more.
Yeah.
And that was just another aha moment where I was like, oh, okay, so I'm subconsciously blocking the force of love through my heart.
Mm.
And so that was really more of an unconditional love journey at that time. So that was really powerful. So and I
And
can
really
share
beautiful
more.
to be able to
Mhm.
come to that, because I like to talk about our unconscious as our operating system, right?
Yes,
Like a
please. The
computer,
OS.
right?
Yeah.
And these beliefs we pick up along the way, and we they store them and they start running our lives. So for you to be able to bring that out of the shadow and be able to say, hey, I had this belief that love hurts,
Yes.
hold love back from all directions because it hurts, right? You're able to kind of flip the script on that,
Hmm.
right? That's really empowering.
It really was. And it never ceases to amaze me. So I conscientiously make it a daily practice to cultivate love in my own heart space. Like I consider myself a well-informed person, but I also consider myself a privileged person in terms of what are the struggles that I deal with day to day.
Mhm.
And I know more about geopolitics than the average human being. And I see the news and I get that the messaging predominantly from our culture is fear. And that's the results of our media. That's the results of ultimately governments
Overconsumption.
not taking accountability to protect humanity from the markets, right? Like I see the history of colonization and I see the history of exploitation and oppression that our culture exerts on people, especially marginalized communities, right? Like the effects of patriarchy, that as women we just have this inherent shame, a sense of unworthiness that I've had to develop awareness of to consciously heal that with self-compassion
Yeah.
and empathy instead. So it's been quite a journey, and I'm so grateful to Elvira V. Hopper, our inspirational leader of the Love Your Vibe transformation. So grateful for her that she saw in me something that I didn't even see yet.
Yeah.
And she asked us to create the 6 month program of the Love Your Vibe transformation based on her VIP Mindset Reset online course. And the teachings and tools that she's come up with that saved her life were transformational in my own self-care, self-love journey. So I want to give some props to Elvira.
Thank
She's
you.
in Italy and very grateful for her intrepid leadership. And that being said, really grateful to you, Jennifer, with the beginning of the pandemic. So when we created the 6 month group mentorship program, like thank goodness for Zoom, thank goodness for Google Drive, and we were able to take those teachings and tools that she shared in the online course, and then we applied them and strung them together for a 6 month program so people can reflect and learn to feel and heal so that they can reveal who they really are truly meant to be. And that's one of
Yeah,
Elvira's slogans, and
that's
I
it.
feel it to be true. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for your holding space and your goddess mama energy. So share with us how you came to self-love and
Mm.
self-care.
Well, my dear friends, it is a process. It
Sure is.
is a, it really is peeling layers of the onion. I think at the root of my personal development journey, especially going into self-love, because I was definitely conditioned, and it was mirrored for me in my parental relationships, my other female, adult relationships, that when a woman would take time to go get a facial or go get their people go, oh, aren't you just look at you, like it was shamed, it was mocked. And so immediately I saw it as like, ooh, we're not supposed to do that, we're not supposed to feel good, we're not supposed to do things that create a good feeling for us. And what an oxymoron. Like it was so confusing for me because I didn't question it. I was not raised to question. I was raised to just follow. This is what I'm doing. This is what mom did. This is what you just do the thing. So I wasn't taught to question. So here I am trying to navigate life as well. This is what feels really good, but if I do that, I'm going to get mocked and shamed. So I guess I should do this because this seems appropriate. So when I began this kind of, we built the program, we went through the course ourselves to start kind of really embodying these practices. And I had such a hard time. I think I was one of the last people that Elvira actually did the VIP Mindset Reset in person.
Hmm.
And it's so simple, but when you are so conditioned to believe the opposite, to reform these neurons and reconnect them in a different way was really, really hard. Like it was really, I had a really hard time. So, we have what we call the three pillars of loving your vibe. And this week it's kind of about the extreme self-care, self-love. And what did that look like for me? So I fortunately had this huge Bristol board and I'd written these things out and I
Hmm.
literally hung them on my closet.
Hmm.
And I would hit a low point in my day and I would remember, oh, what can I do now to support myself?
Hmm.
And I'd go to my list and my heart would jump at the one that I'm supposed to do. Be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm going to go walk in nature. I'm going to go have a bath or whatever it was. I can't remember. It was so long ago now. But as I've applied these and I've used them and they are now just readily available in my toolbox, I don't even have to think about them anymore. As I started doing my trauma healing, this is when some real
Aha.
truth came out. And
Yes.
I use this modality called focusing, which is really just an internal directive. It's allowing the body to speak and to really communicate what those needs are. Like we all have needs as humans. And quite often when we're triggered or hurt, it's because a need is not being met. And when we can look at what is self-care and self-love is how do we meet that need ourselves? And bonus, when the people we love can meet that need as well. But if we can't meet it ourselves first, then how are they going to know how to meet it? So for me, it was like this unveiling of being comfortable in my body to really sense what the need was inside. And I swear to God to you, and this is not a lie. We talk about being miracle magnets, and that really is an energy shift and kind of Elvira says punching a hole in the universe and not worrying about the how hole. Don't worry about the how,
Yeah,
just
I
like, oh
love
my
that
gosh.
thing.
I realized as I got deeper into this modality that I'm like, I, dream your biggest dream. I'm like, going, what are my dreams? Like I literally in November was sitting there going, I've been afraid to dream because I don't really believe I
Mm.
deserve the dream because I
And that
didn't
came.
appreciate
Yeah.
and value and trust myself enough.
Wow. That's a
That
huge
was
response.
huge. That was like transformational for me. And the first thing I wrote on my list, I said, I'm just going to start writing a list of desires. I'm going to call them dreams because that at the time was still a little too lofty. Desires. What do I desire? The first thing I had on that list was have a heart connection and learn how to ride a horse. I started doing that 2 months ago. And I
Yay.
never would have allowed myself to dream that, but that is self-love and self-care for me. This is I leave there and for an hour, like the whole day, I am like literally joyful from my heart outwards. Like I walk into a store and people just start smiling at me because I am abundant of joy. So this is when we talk about filling
Aha.
your cup so that what you give to others is the overflow. As
Yes.
a hairstylist for 35 years, I was functioning with an empty cup, but I always found something to give. But at the end of the day, the resentment and the disappointment, because I'm like, well, why aren't they giving it back?
Yeah.
I had an expectation that
Definitely.
I should somehow get something back,
Aha.
right? I would get in that low vibe, and then everything I gave that I felt so great all day doing, because I was depleted, I got sucked into the trap. I got sucked into that disappointment, into that resentment, into that anger. And so for me, when I talk about self-care and self-love, it's really about bringing that mirror when we're looking, the seeking, when we're seeking love outside and we're looking outside of ourselves for the thing that's going to make us
Yes.
better or fix us. It's really about putting that mirror and reflecting in and saying, it starts here. It starts here.
Yeah.
It doesn't start out there, right? That
Yeah.
was huge for me, like because I was taught to not look at myself because that was somehow selfish. But it's the exact opposite. Because when I'm that full of joy, when I remember that first day driving back from my first lesson, I smiled the whole way. I'm driving the car, smiling the whole way home. Everybody that I looked at would start smiling at me because I wasn't even trying to smile. It was just there. And in this a moment of like, this is what it means to have your cup full. This is what it means to now my love and my heart is coming out from the overflow of me filling my own cup. That was like transformational for me. Transformational for me.
And that's recently, and that's years after doing personal development.
Yes.
Yes. So that was
Yes.
that many layers of years of using the teachings and tools.
Yeah.
That they're not one and done teachings and tools,
No.
that they are repeatedly practicing. And one that I've always admired in you is your poetry. That's one of your powerful ways of self-expression before you got to the horses and
Yeah.
know you to take a bath, right? And to take time and read, like you were learning a lot. So there's so many different aspects to understanding what experts are saying, but actually apply the practice
The
is
embodiment piece was
is the
huge.
embodiment piece and the somatic healing. And as a massage therapist, like the somatic process is fascinating to me, and how like soma means body, and how like just understanding more and more about how the human energetic system works and how it functions and how it connects to anatomy and physiology. And there's a metaphysical element to it. I find it fascinating. But um, the joy that you experienced with the horses, like that unfettered joy and that embodying that dream. And I was really blessed through my teen years to have a horse. And like I know the trust that builds with those
Yeah.
big creatures and the boundaries that we need to, because they're they're big animals that need respect. And for me, that's a big part of love as well, is like how do we trust ourselves? You did say that, learning to trust yourself. How do we learn to respect ourselves? Because if we're not filling our cup, and thank you to Tammy Cunningham, one of our early mentors, she said this phrase, seeking love versus being love. And that was really helpful. Another really key piece of information, what you're saying, that we tend to look for other people to fill our cup for us. And that's the seeking love energy. And I am a recovering codependent because that was how we were conditioned to, look for somebody else to make us whole. Like you said, it's like we're culturally not conditioned to fill our own cup. We are conditioned to be exploited, to be
Mhm.
manipulated, and to
Yeah.
be ultimately like givers, to the point like people pleasing energy is so big, and our society has functioned on that for far too long. So now that we're learning, now we have this knowledge of how the physical body, the energetic body actually works, that we can learn to seek love, that our heart is an extremely powerful electromagnet, and we can learn how to shift how we show up in the world, so that, like you said, so now I'm serving from my overflow rather than draining myself, and that's a process to come
It
to.
is.
um
And
and
it's,
I,
I
I
think too,
and I
and this is
wanted
something
to
if I could,
relate it, sorry, I just wanted to finish one
yeah,
one
yeah,
thought there,
yeah.
then and toss it back to you, that the seeking love versus the being love, but it's another way of thinking about, another way of orienting yourself in the world, from scarcity to abundance. Like
Mhm.
you said, this abundance of joy. But so often we don't even recognize when we're stuck in scarcity, because that's what we've been taught our whole lives. That's
It's
the
familiar.
programming. Like you said, it was like a new neuro pathway. So it's this neuro, well, there's neurodivergence, right? You're not normal, but there's ultimately normal what's normal anyway. But we're
Yeah, exactly.
relearning how to adapt
Yeah,
to what has previously been a toxic culture. And all
yeah.
we can do, I remember seeing a sign, revolution, and right in the middle of the word revolution was the word love. I saw that
Wow.
at a rally one time, and I'm like, it really is a love. And it sounds so woo woo, airy fairy, but it's how we're going to transform this world. And Elvira's vision of creating heaven on earth, when we can start to unlearn and relearn and embody our love. So tell me what you feel about abundance and scarcity and seeking love and being love. How does that influence your self-care
Again,
self-love journey?
coming back into the body, coming back into the self
Hmm.
is, we've talked, I don't know if we've talked that much about shadow work, and that's certainly not the
Hmm.
topic, but those beliefs
Yes.
that don't align with, as we start doing this work and taking the layers off, um, the more capacity we have to hold ourselves and have compassion for ourselves for where we are, meeting ourselves where we are without judgment, the out of the shadow, these beliefs start showing forward. As you had a very similar experience you shared earlier.
Hmm.
For me, there was even fear around experiencing that level of joy. That there was something like, whoop, the other shoe's going to drop. You're
Yep.
not allowed to feel this good for too long.
Yep.
Like, so there's this mind fuckery,
Yes, definitely.
this body mind fuckery that you have to, as we grow and develop, there's an expansion. And once we push past a level of comfort, what we're used to,
Yes.
we go back to this contraction because the nervous system, the body, the ego is kind of like, woo, we've gone over our boundary, get back into the smallness because we're used to being smaller. We don't want to
Yes.
be too shiny because there's too much
Attracted.
attractive. It's just too attractive, right?
Yeah.
So, but it's like a dance. You kind of go in and you out. Like I don't know why this image is coming up about giving birth, but the baby, as it's coming out of the birth canal, it comes out a bit and then it goes back. And it's because you have to create
Hmm.
the movement in the tissue, right? To allow this new thing to be birthed. And it's the same for us. As our souls begin, they're just bigger. The contraction of the ego is easy to keep confined. And the ego will seek out, even if it's uncomfortable, will seek out the familiar because it's comfortable. And as we step into this
Yeah.
work, it's about being open to change. There's nothing going to change if nothing's going to change. And you're the common denominator in every situation that you're in. So it's taking that responsibility, looking at yourself. How am I contributing to my own misery? How am I not allowing myself to feel the joy that I rightfully deserve? And when we start having these conversations, interrupting, even, I would say probably a foundation of self-love is start paying mind to the voice in your head. How is it speaking to you? That is like, if that could be the first thing that you start interrupting and say, oh, sorry, girlfriend, that's not what we're talking. We're not saying that today. We're saying, damn, you look hot. Instead of, why are you wearing that? Right? Like you have to be aware. You have to bring that awareness and
Yeah.
how is all of it functioning?
Yeah.
Because that is the program that we're listening to,
Yeah. The
right?
judgments, the biases. What do you call it? The BS?
The BS, the belief
The
systems.
belief system.
All the BS. Because they're not cognitive. They're not, oh, I'm going to choose
The
to believe
shadow
this
work.
thing about myself. No.
Yeah.
Something happened. We were like, oh, that's uncomfortable. I don't want to let that happen again. I'm not allowed to be shiny. I'm not allowed to use my voice. We put it in the belief system. We
You're
put
gonna
it in,
fuck it up, right? Like
we're
that.
gonna fuck it up. Oh, that's one of my famous ones. And that still comes up. That still comes up for me. I'm so aware of it, but I see where it shows up.
Yeah.
And I just hold it and say, oh my gosh, I get it. And it's okay if we fuck up because that's gonna what we're gonna learn. So I flipped it. And
Yeah.
that is a huge level of self-love and self-care because now I'm not abusing myself. Right? It's so easy when we go out in the world and our prejudices and our biases and we inflict this on other people.
Yes.
Well, start looking at how you're speaking to yourself.
The projection of it is so fascinating, isn't it?
It
It never
is.
ceases to amaze me how the shadow, and it's really like and thank you, Elvira mentioned this trauma informed certificate course that I've been listening to and you've been through and learning more about that, and it's an adaptation. Like
Yeah.
one of the things we talk about in the Love Your Vibe transformation, like in the ego, and the ego is a reflection of the shadow and the subconscious and how it's there to protect us, but it often manifests as the bully, as the perpetrator. There's a power over dynamic, or the victim, and the victim is the power under energy that often plays in tandem
And
with
it
the bully
does.
and the victim. And
Plays
that's just
tennis.
like, and we all do it. And that's because it's a defense mechanism. It's an adaptation to trauma, both of them.
Mhm.
Like it's easy to point finger at narcissists and say you're bad, but until we actually look at it, it's like, well, how are we embodying our own victimization? Because it doesn't excuse that we've been victimized. Because as I said, like that's how our system has evolved. That's just the fact of history.
It's how do we perpetuate it on
But
ourselves?
how do we perpetuate it, and how do we expand? Because if trauma, you said it's contraction, there's a smallness that is too often how we live our lives, and we just think it's normal. Back to actually how do we increase capacity, and how do we learn to embody that joy? You said you had a fear of joy. I discovered and uncovered a layer of fear of peace in my journey, because if I was actually peaceful, there was some part of my psyche that believed that I wouldn't be hypervigilant to to threats, that I had to be on overdrive in order to keep safe.
Yeah.
So I had to figure out what inner peace felt like and learn to cultivate that as well. And gratitude, very similar story. As an ingredient on the way to real self-love is learning to feel grateful, that rather than complaining, because it's so easy to complain. And instead of
Well,
looking
it's
at things as,
enforced. It's enforced.
yeah, like problems and issues, for me, I flip to become challenges and opportunities.
Yeah.
Easier said than done,
This is
but
a
with
powerful
time,
machine.
very powerful. So
I
the
did an
power of
exercise
language.
today
Yeah, please.
in my somatic focusing group where the woman invited us to close our eyes. And she said, now imagine biting into a lemon. What is happening right now in your body?
Puckering.
There's a puckering, there's a tingling in your saliva glands.
Yep.
This is just at the thought of it.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yes.
This is just the thought of it. Our body responds by this creating a thought. So if we start rewiring those thoughts to be loving thoughts,
Yes.
you show up in the world in a different energy. That is going to come back to you because that is what you're projecting out from you.
Yes.
And I
Raise
saw it
bearing.
that day coming back from my horse time. I was like, I was so full of joy that people were literally smiling at me. And
Hmm.
I don't go around. I was like that day. That's what it felt like. I just had like, so I just want to, we talk about self-love and it sounds so, fluffy or not. It is actually the foundation. It's the
Yes.
foundation of any personal development. Because if you can't look at yourself in the mirror and say, I accept you for where you are and who you are today, with
Unconditionally.
all of your flaws and all of your scars and all of your mistakes and all of your fuck ups, then how can you accept and love anybody else? And we're meant to do this together. Like there's tribes in Africa, there's in the indigenous community that they never separated the bad person. They would bring them into love and tell them all the wonderful things about them.
Yes.
So how do we do that for ourselves first and then be able to share that forward? And
Yeah.
I really think that for us wanting to build this movement and build this community is about how do we shine that out together energetically? How do we show other people to find that and harvest that in themselves? Because it's in here. It's in here. It's just buried under a lot of poo-poo. Just maybe a little bit of poo-poo there. And we
And the
need to get,
BS.
right? A little bit of the BS. We got to get through some of that so that the shoots can start growing
Yes, because
and
our
becoming that
crap is
gentle
our best
gardener.
fertilizer, right? Like there's
Yeah.
something to that natural progression, and we need the struggle to learn how to.
Yep.
We really do. And that's,
Butterfly doesn't break out of the cocoon without a fight.
and if you help them, they'll die. I've heard
Exactly.
too. Like, not to say that we can't hold space for each other. And I think there's so much I want to say, but we are
So
miracle mindset
much.
mentors. We
Yeah.
call ourselves miracle mindset mentors. And it took me a long time to say that out loud because who the fuck am I to be a miracle magnet? But really, who am I not to be? And I love Marianne Williamson. She's a great mentor of mine. That she's a spiritual author, and yet she ran for president twice because she walks her talk and realized like we cannot take democracy for granted,
Yeah.
and how our culture operates. Um, the point being is very oppressive. Like I said, it's very it's a shrinking energy, like
Attractive.
and what I
Fearful.
love about the Love Your Vibe transformation is Elvira's vision of creating a new culture where we are safer, seen, celebrated, and supported.
Yeah.
And that was when we kind of talked about these teachings and tools together, and the four circles of personal power is her one of her signature tools that was really helpful for me to envision boundaries. And how do I interact with other people? And right there in the center of the inner circle was the star. And that we're like, oh, that's you're the star of your own life, right? So if you can't feel learn to feel safer, seen, celebrated, and supported in your own skin, then it's really difficult to identify when other people are treating you that way.
It's another great, great, easy read too by Don Miguel Ruiz, The Voice of Knowledge.
Oh,
And that talks about you're the star of your life. You are the main
mhm.
character of your life, and
Yeah.
everybody else is secondary characters. But then keeping in mind that you're a secondary character in their life. So the only way you change your story is by changing the main character,
Yeah.
right? So how do we fill our cups? So I
How
think
do
we've
we
given
fill
you
our
some
cup?
beautiful examples today. We'd love to hear any questions that you might have. We'll be posting this in the group. So keep a lookout for us. We'll be doing these weekly. You won't always see our faces. We got a beautiful group of women and men possibly that will be coming on and sharing their stories. And we're really, really thrilled to have this opportunity to share our voices with you and to connect with you in this way. Final thoughts, Eleanor.
So grateful for this opportunity. Pardon me, Jennifer. And I love pardon me, the members in our community are just fantastic. Like that everybody is a miracle mindset mentor as they've come through our program and our apprentice training program. And those of the apprentices that there's a large group of apprentices that are learning to come to that place in their life as well, and they become sacred space holders in our communities. We do this personal development in small groups because you can do this work on your own, the hard way, learning one of these teachings and tools one at a time and on your own. But that's what I loved about Elvira's online course is then she like wrapped together a lot of those teachings and tools with a bow. And yet, like the value is there. Like it's like you can stick those tools on a shelf, but until you actually learn how to use them, and it's a whole lot easier to use them when there are other people witnessing you
Using them with you.
in a way that's non-judgmental, and that
Yeah.
they're and as we share our stories, our message and our magic emerges to make like that this is how my life is unfolded, and people are like, oh, well, I've experienced that too, and that just brings this degree of being witnessed that it just brings some light and it brings some
Yeah.
space and it brings some what's it's like an unclenching to just feel witness. And it's very tiring doing inner
It's
work. I do want to put that out to people that doing this inner work is not easy because so often you feel exhausted and tired afterwards. And it tends to like come with it, like all of these other realizations that we've been holding ourselves back. And there's a lot of grief. Even as we become who we're meant to be, grief is a natural part of the process and to be held and really witnessed with those tears and that it's an ongoing process and it's uncomfortable at times to that struggle is real, but the more that you go through it, the more capacity you're building, more resilience you're embodying. And I'm so grateful for you and everything that you've learned with the somatic healing and the focusing sessions. And it's just been I've learned from your journey, Jennifer. It really fit with my own path, and as a body worker, as an energy worker, it's like, oh, okay, now we're learning to come to trauma because a lot of therapists, a lot of coaches, a lot of doctors are not really trauma informed or trauma aware, and then that trauma cycle can perpetuate in that unconscious. So
so
often, like
easily.
medical trauma as an example, like that birth
Yeah.
analogy and and
Yeah.
and how we if we don't really understand energetically how the body functions, then we can too easily hurt other people when we don't address their humanity.
Yeah. And there's
Mm.
something too, I wanted to kind of just speak to, like
Please.
how you said that tiredness comes in. Our
Yeah.
nervous system is so wired for fight or flight.
Yes.
Like that we're kind of conditioned. I'm a freezer, but most people, especially in new situations, you're coming into a new situation, a new group, there's a fight or flight. Oh my gosh, I'm nervous. I don't know these people. I'm scared. As this safety and trust begins to develop, you start feeling comfortable.
Hmm.
And now all of a sudden you're going into rest digest when you're around these people because you're
Yeah.
feeling safe.
Yes, yes.
That tiredness comes in
Yes. Yes.
because now you're like, oh, I don't have to be hypervigilant. I can just be myself. And that's the body going, okay, I've been fighting a long time. I'm ready to just lay down and just be.
Yep.
And that's the surrender part, right? And that's the regulation because we're meant to do this work. We're meant to co-regulate. When we show up as leaders, we're
Yes.
in this divine state of alignment and attunement, and we share that energetically with our clients and our participants and our groups. And that is what really helps to create the space for your own inner evaluation, your own inner coming back to wholeness. Like that's what this is really all about. You have all the pieces, there's nothing broken, but they're shrunk away. And how do we water the good things so
Yay.
that they bloom, right?
Yay, very well
So,
said. On that
yeah,
note, I think that says everything
I
we
think we're at
really
a half an hour or so.
need to say, want to say about self-love and self-care, and self-care is not selfish. It is an
It's
act of
self-care is
service.
not selfish. It is
Act of service.
empowerment.
Yes,
It
it is.
is huge. And I want to share that next week's topic will be around healing in community as we rise together. So healing doesn't happen in isolation. And so that'll be our topic next week. I hope any questions that you have around that, please put them below this video and we will add them into the content for next week's little pod video cast, whatever this is, our
Yeah,
little miracle magnet
our
zone
show.
coming at you. We
I
look
love your
forward
vibe
to this
show.
every week. Thank you so much. Have a blessed, blessed Tuesday.